Welcome to Slow and Steady, the podcast where you get to follow along as we build products in public. Each week, we'll give you an honest peek into our lives as we share our struggles, our wins, and everything in between. I am Benedicte, and I am feeling frustrated.
And I'm Benedikt. Today is March 29th. This is episode number 133, and I'm feeling optimistic. And boy, I can tell you're frustrated, like you rushed that into that intro. I want to get this done now.
I opened the blinders of my windows before the recording that we were going to have with Steve, who will then be a future guest because his internet did not work, which makes me even more frustrated. But what made me frustrated in the at first hand here is it snowed. It's snowing. It's snowing. It's not supposed to snow now. I was wondering why I was so cold. I wrapped myself in blankets and then I opened my blinders. I mean, this morning it was not snowing, and then I've been sitting with it down because there was so much sun coming in through the windows, and I was like, what lovely spring weather we have. And then suddenly I just peeked out, and it wasn't just snowing, it was snowing sideways. It was snowing sideways. And but then I was like, okay, we're gonna do this amazing interview with Steve, who is making TL Draw, and then his internet just ended up not working. So that kind of a day, I guess. Yeah, but I'm also kind of, I don't know, I'm also feeling a little frustrated that that we don't have any of us have kind of unlimited time or energy. I guess I just want to do all the things. I want to travel, I want to code on POW, I want to create plugins for people, I want to write my emails, I want to do it all. But there isn't enough time. Or, as I guess I wrote in my notes, there is enough time, but is there enough energy? I don't know. Because I will binge Bridgerton 2 this week. So, I mean, there's time. But yeah, no, it feels a little frustrating. It's just and I have when you start working on something again, like POW, there are so many new ideas and marketing ideas and content ideas and feature ideas, and you got to prioritize those. And we also need to prioritize kind of the queen work to make money, hopefully, while we're building out POW. Because even if POW became a major success within the next 6 months, it's not gonna bring, it's gonna be slow and steady before that brings in a lot of cash. So we keep working on the queendom, I guess, with offering, the demonstration demo integration that I talked about. But now we're also gonna do, which was my original thought, but it seems like the time is getting there. The market is catching up with us on services needing help with their source plugins, which is kind of my more aligned and even more niche and more aligned with what I really enjoy doing. And Gatsby just released image CDN, their own image CDN, and a new way to do images that speeds everything up, and it's super interesting. And we did a stream last week with I keep calling him Ward because that's what I've read on the Twitter, but I mean, he's European, so it's Wart. He was on stream, and we added image CDN support to one of the plugins that I have for kind of demo purposes. One of the source plugins we do as a demo or proof of concept kind of plugin. Yeah. And that was a lot of fun. But anyway, back to the frustration is that I just want to do it all. And gotta go slow and steady. Yes, gotta say that once at least every episode.
You can do it all, just not at once, right?
Yes, but it's so frustrating. And all the cliches are right. You underestimate what you can do you overestimate what you can do in a month, and you underestimate what you can do in a year. So if you just kind of lay it out and do it sequentially, I will have time within the next 5 years. But I want to do now, next month.
Yeah.
So I guess I just need to sit down and do some kind of strategy or just calendar, get out to calendar and plan some focus project, which is one of my mentors talk about, where you kind of define focus project, and it has to be less than 30 days calendar-wise, and then you kind of slot those out and kind of get these projects completed before you start too much. Yeah. But on that note of doing too much, leaving on Saturday for the Americas. So if you're in New York or Minnesota next week, let me know, and we can do another Slow and Steady / Queen meetup, informal meetup. So just reach out to me on Twitter DMs if you would like to meet. I would love to meet you if you are in any of those cities. It was a blast in London, so I want to repeat that. And to conclude my frustrating update, which is not so frustrating, we have decided to publish the Gatsby version of the POW marketing site this week, and it's on track, and it will be done by Thursday. We're going to show it off on stream on Thursday and maybe do some additional work on it. And it felt a little bit like busy work. Our Squarespace site is working. It just feels really wrong when your other business is to be a Gatsby expert to have your marketing site on Squarespace. But I'm also noticing that some of my writing hesitation is being kind of unblocked, because one of the things I really don't like about Squarespace is their blogging interface, both how it looks, it's all centered usually, you really have to go in and override if not all the text is supposed to be centered. So for the people reading it, I find it a little annoying. That might have been improved, but anyways, so I just didn't like that. And also just writing it, going into that, as a developer, we just don't like CMSs, do we? So having to be able to just stay in my beloved Markdown and write like I do my emails, it just made me want to write again for POW, write more for POW. And I was talking to some other, developer founders when I was in Athens, and it seemed like when I told them about my setup for my Queen emails, where I write, in Markdown, I publish it to my site, and then that becomes an RSS feed, and then the RSS feed is pushed to ConvertKit, and then ConvertKit makes emails for me. A lot of them were like, "What? I can do that? I don't have to go into the what you see is what you get editor or whatever thing that I'm using." And I was like, yes. And I think even though it's this weird excuse, it takes you out of your flow, right? It takes you out of where you're comfortable, and doing something scary as writing can be. And at least if I'm going to write for POW, and at least if I'm going to write from more of a personal experience with, why I made POW and how POW helps me in my life, then I want to make, the rest of the experience as comfortable and familiar as possible, so that, you only kind of have one thing that makes you scared or procrastinating or whatever. So I don't think it was a little bit of a busy work, but also I think it was the right thing to do. And hopefully with Gatsby, though, my plan is that we'll source the more technical things, or the whatever I write and Ola writes, from Markdown. And then if we do get these other, have keeping on talking to these other people that are going to be onboarded, I am thinking of maybe letting them write in Google Docs, because I've heard some people sourcing content from Google Docs, and that being, the preferred place for a lot of non-technical people to write. So why first write it in Google Docs, do all the kind of editing and commenting there, and then copy paste it into a CMS when it looks like you can just keep it in Google Docs and source from Google Docs on build with Gatsby. So I think that will be my approach, letting everyone just write where they are most comfortable, and then source it and mesh it together and make it look like a cohesive blog, without it having to be that on the back end. So yeah, that's on my mind today. A little frustrated, but it's gonna be fun. I'm leaving for the Americas, where it's also the coldest spring, it seems like, in ages, and Athens was the coldest it'd been in ages, so maybe I shouldn't come visit your town. London was warm, though. So might not be me, but we'll see.
Well, nice.
What's up with you? You're optimistic, the opposite of me, I feel.
Yeah. I'm optimistic because I feel like and now that I say it out loud, I feel like I've been saying it for the last 3 episodes or so. I'm feeling optimistic about the import implementation. And I feel like we're on the last stretch for good now. We actually imported, we actually finished like a first version of it last week, and then of course we ran it, and then we noticed, okay, there are a couple of more things we have to change now that we run it in production. But that's what we're working on this week, basically polishing a little bit more. And I'm hopeful that the list of to-dos isn't getting any longer anymore. Hopefully I just work through that and then we can ship it. But then again, like today, we had a support request that was like pretty obviously a spammer trying to get their email list imported, because like the name on the initial email didn't match the email address, which didn't match their user list account. Like they all like 3 different names and email addresses that were obviously spammy. Like one of them had like, it was an obvious like throwaway email account, and they wrote into support asking to get the import feature enabled. So we might not enable this feature by default and just like have people email in to get it enabled, because yeah, I don't know. This could have been much worse if the feature was already out there and enabled by default, because then they would just import a list and like start spamming people. So anyways, I'm optimistic because we're making good progress there. I'm also optimistic because last week was pretty productive, like for a change.
Yay.
As I said, like we finished that import stuff in between calls last Tuesday. Basically, in between the recording, the podcast recording, and a couple of other calls, I was able to update our backend application to the most recent version of Ruby and to the most recent version of Rails, which were both at least minor version. Like Ruby was a minor version upgrade and Rails was a major version upgrade. And I was able to do them both in one day, in between calls. So that's a success in my books.
Absolutely.
And I've been I had been putting both off for quite a while, because like just like updating and then running the tests, it was like a nightmare of red. Like at least half of the tests were broken. But it turns out it wasn't that easy. Wasn't that difficult to fix. So yeah, that's all good. And then also last week we published heap integration we started a couple of weeks ago. And it's now up and running on production. It's enabled in heap. Actually, I have to check if we're listed in that directory yet, but it's working. It's up and running. We got the copy approved and all of that, and we're scheduled for some co-promotion with them sometime in April. I'm not entirely sure about the timeline, but looking forward to that, because it's a relatively unique approach to integrating with heap. And we added a new concept of like external segments into user lists. So right now you have the segments you manage inside of user list, where you add conditions and stuff like that. And the external segments are basically managed in heap. And heap tells us about like what's happening, like who's joining and who's leaving, and we replicate that in user list, and then you can run automations based on your segments in heap, which is quite nice and interesting, because while I think our segmentation engine is super powerful, I think heaps engine is maybe even a little bit more powerful, or they have like slightly different like data, because they do like page views and clicks and all of that. So I feel like it's quite complementary in the things you can do with it. So
how does it work under
the?
How does the integration work under the hood? Did you have to create a new? Yeah, you had to create the external segment concept on your end. But how are you communicating with Heap? Would that be in the same way you are with the other integrations, or did you have to do something new there as well?
So what we had to change was basically like we changed our segments to have like different behaviors. So there's now a field on the segments that tells the system if they either managed externally or internally. When it's internally, we run the automation engine on our side. Otherwise, we don't do anything. And for the integration with them, it connects via OAuth. So you click a button inside of user list. It does like the usual dance of like confirming it. And once that is done, they send us webhooks about changes to the segments. Basically, inside their system, when you manage segments, you now have an option to enable like external services on those segments. So you can pick and choose which ones to synchronize. And once you click that button, they will start sending us the initial update with like the current list. And then I think every 4 hours, they will send an update with deltas and who got removed and who got added.
Oh, interesting.
And that's was relatively simple, and it's pretty cool. The only downside is that we just get identifiers from them. So they don't tell us anything else, like no email addresses, no names, no additional properties. So you have to integrate both systems, like both user list and heap, into your application. But once you've done that, you can harness the full power of both, I guess. And that's pretty cool.
It feels like a very good use of like how the internet was supposed to work as well. Like you send webhooks, so there's an update, and they're separate, but they can work together. It's like a beautiful example of the architecture behind all we do. Using it as intended.
I feel like webhooks are one of the best inventions in that regard of the last couple of years, because yes, you still have to do some custom code, but well, I guess webhooks and OAuth are insanely useful standard when it comes to like connecting tools and making them work nicely together. So yeah, I'm excited about that.
Cool.
So that's what we did on the product side last week. The other thing we started this week, and it's a little bit of a nightmare, to be honest, is with more people on the team, we decided that it's a good time to migrate our email infrastructure, like our company email infrastructure, from the shared host that we were using under Jane's like personal account for now, to Google Workspaces, I think is the current name. They keep changing it every 3 months or so. And we were going back and forth about, should we go to Google Workspace or should we go to Fastmail or something like that? But ultimately, because we're using Google Docs so much, we figured it would probably make sense to have like the calendar and docs and the sheets and like all of it in one place and have it centrally managed with all our employees and contractors on it. But it's just not a pleasant experience to set this up. First, it didn't let me pick my preferred email address, so I had to come up with a new one. Not sure why.
It just didn't want to?
Like, I was trying to get like Benedict@userlist.com, and it was like, nope, you're not allowed. It's not valid. Whatever.
Okay.
So I did like Benedict.Deike@userlist.com. That was fine for some reason. That at least allowed us to create the account and add billing information, and then we're starting to invite our contractors and everyone who's going to get a new account. And Jane at userlist.com wasn't a problem, and Leo and all the others. And at last we were like, okay, let's try Benedict@userlist.com again. And of course it worked. So I'm not entirely sure what the initial problem was. And down the process, at some point we decided, yeah, let's get rid of that additional account, like the first one you set up. So we made the other ones the admin user, and we deleted it. So now I've got the email address I wanted, and I'm not sure why it wasn't able to do this in the first place. So anyways, after we got done with that hurdle, that took us like quite a while on Monday. So earlier today we decided, okay, let's finish it, like set all the email forwards and stuff like that and migrate the DNS records over. So we did that. And then we obviously also wanted DKIM authentication and signing on the DNS headers and stuff like that. DNS records and email headers. So we tried to set that one up and it didn't work. Like there's a button like generate new keys, and it just returns an error message. And there's nothing, no previous value or anything.
Okay, I'm getting more frustrated now. You're optimistic, but I am even more frustrated on your behalf.
Yeah, like we got frustrated as well. It was pretty annoying. And surprising thing about like interaction with Google, like my first time actually that this worked. Like we started a support chat and we were first in the queue, and like after a minute or so we were talking to a person, and they basically told us, this is expected behavior because you're not allowed to set up DKIM keys until 72 hours after account creation. And like, what? Like, you expect us to, like, we're starting a trial. You want us to migrate all of our email over, and you actually let us change configuration and anything, but like this part, there's just an error message with like it failed, and you're not telling us why, and then you tell me it's like because the count isn't older than 72 hours, and we're like, yeah, that's how it is. And but don't worry, like you just turn off like your DMARC policies to just allow basically everyone on the earth to send with your email address and your domain, and it's all good. You can just use it. And it was like, that doesn't sound like an option to me. Like you basically want us to like remove all protections on the domain, on the mail servers and everything for like 72 hours just to try or set up this thing. So in the end, we rolled back all the DNS changes and waiting 72 hours to set it up again, because before that there's no way to do it. It's frustrating, but overall I'm optimistic about like getting everything centralized and in place, and finally having shared team calendars and dedicated work calendars and all of that. So overall, I'm still optimistic that it will make things a lot easier than they are right now. So yeah, that's my story of this week and last week, I guess.
Interestingly, though, I actually have a Google Workspace. I think isn't it called G Suite now? Anyway, maybe it's over to Workspace. Is that the new?
Yeah, it's over to Workspace.
Okay,
yeah. It was G Suite for a while, and now it's Google Workspace.
Yeah, but on my personal domain, kind of my personal email, I've had it since so long that they are not charging me money. Like I can do whatever I want on that one without, it's like one of these grandfathered in or grandmothered in things where as long as I don't like start making big changes, everyone is just keeping quiet about me being on there for absolutely free. But then of course, being the good girl I am, when I started, another business, or more of a business, domain, I created a new one, and that one I have to pay for. So I have been wondering if I should just like migrate everything to my personal one and just have aliases for all the domains, because that's what I do on that business account, instead of creating, whenever I buy a new domain and start a new project, I've learned not to start a new account, but I add it as a alias domain in the Lily Labs workspace, so that you can like email me at usepower at Lily Labs or at Lily Apps, or what other ones do I have? Ray Codes. All of them are just into the same email. But yeah, so I'm on a free version, and on a forever free version of Google Workspace.
Nice. I mean, in the end, it's not that expensive. I think we're on the starter package, which is like $6 per user per month, which is it's fine.
It's so little that remember to turn on the yearly plan, because otherwise you have to find those little invoices every freaking month for $6, and you don't want that. That's my big tip.
Yeah.
Always go yearly so you can spend less time on your accounting.
Yes, totally. That's a good tip. By the way, the other fun fact that we found out later on is, in addition to DKIM records not being available until 72 hours in, YouTube is also not available until 72 hours in. So when one of us goes to YouTube now, it's like, nope, YouTube's like, you're not allowed to go on YouTube. Like, you have to wait at least 3 days before we allow you on YouTube.
And you can't switch to your personal YouTube account. I have so
No,
many
you
YouTube
can't.
accounts.
At least you can't on YouTube.
Mm.
So you basically go to YouTube and it's an error page, and that's it. Like, there's no buttons, no links, no nothing.
This is why
The
you're so
only way
optimistic.
Yeah, right.
You have
Just like,
you have time to code because there's no YouTube.
true. Maybe that's like, they're probably like, don't use YouTube in the first 72 hours because you need all that time setting up the account anyways. Because like, there's a million settings. Go spend your time over there. But like, the only way around is like to go to Gmail or whatever, sign out of all Google accounts you signed in, then go to YouTube and then sign in with the non-work account or whatever, and like slowly add them back up in there. It's a mess.
I feel like Workspace's G Suite, Google for Small Businesses, which was the original name, I think.
Yeah.
I think they have some legacy code.
I'm pretty sure about that, yes.
Because things are getting increasingly hard, or like it's hard to figure out, like, how do you merge accounts? I wanted to create a new YouTube channel. I didn't want it to be personal. And you hear these horror stories of people trying to like migrate their YouTube channel and it's just gone and stuff like that. So there's obviously some legacy stuff going on that they don't have fully under full control over, or full understanding of, I think. Yeah.
I mean, the good thing is, like, these days, at least, it feels like you can switch accounts on most pages. Like, obviously not all of them, but I can think back a couple of years where, depending on where you were going, there was no way to switch accounts or even log out or anything. We're just like stuck in a redirect loop that didn't bring you anywhere. And I feel like that part's gotten a little bit better, but
that reminds me, I should check my Gmail account. I haven't checked my Gmail account in maybe forever, because I think I have one that was connected, because you couldn't get YouTube with your business accounts or your G Suite accounts or whatever, Workspace account. So I still had to keep my regular old Gmail to be able to be on YouTube. Anyway, not that interesting for folks, but that's how it is when you've been online for too long. Things get complicated.
Yes. I'm also not looking forward to migrating all our calendars and calendar invites and scheduled events over to the new calendar. But, well, we'll figure it out.
It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. You're optimistic. I also forgot in my update, I wanted to shout out to Pascal, who wrote or quote tweeted one of our updates about how he enjoyed me referencing the Stephen Pressfield's The Resistance as a way to determine if an idea is important and should be pursued. It felt very motivating that you noticed that and quote tweeted. And it says, "Go on, Benedicte." And I said, "I will." Muscle emoji. Or no, fist bump emoji. So this is happening. POW is happening.
Nice. Cool.
Yes.
Well done. I guess that's it for this week. Have a very nice MicroConf. I'm a little bit jealous. I had a ticket and I decided not to go. But I'm starting to regret it, as usual, as one does with like.
You can still go. You can still go.
I had my reasons for not going, and they haven't really changed. So
okay.
So I'm not going, but I'm looking from over here with a sad face and wishing you a good time there.
As I kind of
So-
YOLO'd this whole thing by applying for the scholarship, I was like, it's probably going to be good. But after talking to you, and every time you're like, well, you shouldn't have to record a podcast because you need to be with the people. And you know, I feel like, okay, this is going to be more fun than I thought. So if it turns out not to be fun, it's your fault. Because my expectations were pretty low. And you raised them a lot. So I'll report back on how
MicroConf
that...
people, please help me with us. Like, have a good time.
Yes, that would be awesome. So I guess I see some of you in person this coming week, and the rest of you, see you on the interwebs.
Bye.
Bye.